Data have played an increasingly significant role in healthcare decision-making. It is not just providers, but lawmakers and researchers who are turning to data analytics and predictive models to help allocate resources, predict surges, improve patient care and outcomes, and employ preventive measures. We can collect all the data we want, but it doesn't do any good if we don't know what to do with that information. We need a centralized, systematic way of collecting, storing, and analyzing data so we can use it to our advantage. Good day, I am Dr. Penny Adversario, and we are here to learn about the basic components and principles of data processing. We will revisit descriptive analysis, to which you were introduced to in your first year. We hope to learn how to choose the appropriate statistical test for analyzing quantitative data, and lastly, have an awareness on what qualitative data analysis is all about. Before data can be analyzed, it has to be processed into a form that is suitable for analysis. There are three basic components in data processing: editing, coding, and computing. Data editing is the process of inspecting the raw data from a questionnaire and correcting it for any errors to ensure its accuracy, reliability, and completeness. This is also referred to as data screening. Why do we edit data? Data has to be screened for gross errors, incomplete, inconsistent, and vague responses to questions, fill in missing or contradictory data so that it can be used for intended analytic purposes. When is data editing performed? In the field and in the central office. In the field, during data collection, the interviewer cannot always write out completely and legibly the responses due to time constraints. Ad hoc abbreviations, symbols, and writing style of the interviewer can be difficult for others to decipher. Therefore, as soon as possible, the interviewer should review the responses, complete what was abbreviated, translate any personal shorthand, and rewrite all illegible handwritings. In central edit, when the questionnaires arrive at the central office, a more thorough editing is performed, such as the following: checking inconsistencies, checking incorrect entries, replacing inappropriate replies with the proper answer by reviewing the other information in the questionnaire. Who should edit the data? In the field, the interviewer reviews after each completed interview or the latest by the end of the day, and or the supervisor upon receipt of the questionnaire to detect obvious errors which can be corrected in the field. In the central office, by an editor to judge whether information is sufficiently complete to be coded. The questionnaire should be checked for completeness to determine if each question was answered. Incomplete answers should be filled up if possible. The editor may write NR for not reported, MI for missing information, or some other code for any missing entry. If the missing information is important, the questionnaire may be returned to the informant, requesting him to furnish more complete data. It is also checked for consistency, which involves checking entries for errors and inconsistencies. Such as in the following example. In the first example, a 6-year-old male cannot possibly be married. In the second example, it is a probable inconsistency because the respondent may or may not have 6 children at 17 years old. And it is a definite inconsistency since a male cannot undergo menarche. The questionnaire is also checked for any response which is incomprehensible. It is also checked for legibility, meaning deciphering unreadable handwriting, that is, illegible handwriting, light handwriting, use of block letters instead of script, use of some writing conventions. It is also checked for accuracy, to locate and discard answers which are extremely doubtful and inaccurate, and uniformity, standardize all answers involving units of measurement. The second component of data processing is data coding. It is the process of grouping the responses to a question into categories and assigning numbers, characters, and or other symbols called codes to these categories so as to facilitate tabulation. Like for example, M or 0 for male and F or 1 for female. Why do we code? To group responses into categories, to simplify the information so it can be entered easily into the computer's database, and facilitate the process of sorting, merging, transforming, and listing data, and eventually performing analysis. It is also a means to preserve the confidentiality of the responses. There are several types of codes, the first of which is your field codes, where data is recorded as is and as they are given by the respondent. For example, the respondent's ID number, the age, the number of children, the height of the respondent. The second is your bracket codes, where data is recorded as a range of values, as in the following example. Factual or listing codes is a type of coding used when the question is of the multiple choice type or when several combinations of multiple responses are anticipated. A column is allocated for each possible answer with 0 for no and 1 for yes, such as in the following example. Pattern code is used when a single code is allocated to each type of response, including multiple or combined responses. Scale codes represent grouping of responses which vary in degree or intensity along a continuum. This is often used for coding responses to attitudinal questions. In constructing the scale code, we first divide the continuum into segments. Then we represent each segment by a number, which serves as the code for any response falling within it. The process of coding starts with pre-coding, which refers to coding of responses when the questionnaire is being constructed. It is limited chiefly to questions whose answer categories are known in advance, while post-coding refers to coding of responses after the questionnaires have been answered. It allows the coder to ascertain which answers are actually given by the respondents before beginning coding. This is an example of a coding manual or a code book. It defines the meaning of the numerical code and classifies the responses made on the questionnaire. In devising the codes, the objectives must be considered. The code should not be more detailed than necessary. The code should be exhaustive and mutually exclusive. And there are certain coding conventions that can be adopted for questions with similar answers, such as the following. And the final step in data processing is data computing, which entails converting units of measurement given by the respondents to the unit of measurement specified for the variable of interest, like converting number of cigarette sticks per day to smoking pack years, or converting weight and height measurements to BMI. Data analysis follows data collection, and in the context of creating a research proposal, it will be discussed in terms of one's plan for analysis on the basis of the study objectives. We now go into quantitative data analysis, which can be descriptive and inferential. As a review, descriptive statistics is a method to summarize and present data in a form which will make it easier to analyze and interpret, while inferential statistics is a method to make generalizations and conclusions about a target population based on the result from a sample. Data can be summarized and presented in text, tables, and graphs. As a review for graphs, a pie graph is used to show breakdown of a group or total where the number of categories is not too many. The segments are ordered strictly beginning at the 12 o'clock position and running in a clockwise direction from the largest to the smallest proportion and from the darkest to the lightest shade. There are two types of bar graphs. The vertical bar graph is used for comparison of absolute or relative counts between categories of a discrete quantitative variable. The quantitative discrete variable, which is the number of COVID-19 presenting signs and symptoms, is placed on the x-axis, and the absolute count, which is the number of patients, is placed on the y-axis. While the horizontal bar graph is for comparison of absolute or relative counts between categories of a qualitative variable. The qualitative variable, clinical department, is placed on the y-axis, and the relative count, which is the number of telemedicine consults, is placed on the x-axis. The component bar graph is preferable over pi in situations where the composition of two or more groups are to be compared. In this example, the groups being compared are non-severe COVID cases seen among younger age groups and severe COVID cases seen among older age groups. The histogram is a graphical representation of the frequency distribution of a continuous variable. The horizontal axis or x-axis is a continuous scale, and for this example, the continuous variable is C-reactive protein. The vertical scale or the y-axis shows the absolute or relative frequencies. If the frequencies are plotted against the corresponding midpoints of the classes and the endpoints are joined to the horizontal axis to close the figure, the result is a frequency polygon. This is advantageous if two or more distributions are to be depicted in a single graph. A line graph is used to show changes of the variable with time. The time variable, which is monthly intervals, is placed on the x-axis, and the absolute count, which is the total number of coronavirus deaths, is placed on the y-axis. A scatter plot is used to show the relationship between two quantitative variables. In the example, it is LDH and AST, known liver enzymes expected to increase in COVID cases. It gives a rough estimate of the type and degree of correlation between variables. An upward direction implies a direct positive relationship, that is, as AST increases, LDH likewise increases. A perfect straight line indicates a high degree of correlation between the variables. This is a summary of the type of graph, the nature of the variable, and its use. The third type of describing and presenting data is through the use of summarizing figures, which can be qualitative or quantitative. For qualitative measures, we have measures of frequency, and other measures of frequency are counts, ratios, proportions, and percentages. Counts and proportions are used to describe and summarize nominal and qualitative ordinal data. Another are your measures of location, which refer to percentiles, deciles, and quartiles, which are basically used to compare a given value with some normal or standard value, as in interpretation of growth charts, measures of ability and intelligence, and determining normal range of laboratory values. Under quantitative measures, we have measures of central tendency. And measures of central tendency refer to your mean, median, and mode. The mean is the average, the median is the middlemost, and the mode is the most frequently occurring value in a set of observations. The mean is used to describe and summarize ratio and interval data. The median is used to describe and summarize quantitative ordinal data and skewed numerical data. When the data is normally distributed, the three can be used interchangeably. And also measures of dispersion, which provide information on the degree of spread or variability in the data. The greater the variance, the more dispersed the data, the farther the values of the individual observations are from the mean. The range is simply the difference between the highest and the lowest value in a set of observations when the purpose is to emphasize extreme values. Conceptually, the variance is the average of the squared deviations from the mean. The mean is the reference point, such that any deviation or difference from the reference point gives an idea of how close or how far the individual observations are from the mean. The standard deviation is the square root of the variance and is used when the mean is used. We now go to the second type of statistical analysis, which is inferential analysis. It is a method to make generalizations and conclusions about a target population based on the result from a sample, either through estimation or hypothesis testing. Estimation is approximating population values based on findings from a sample, while hypothesis testing is determining whether the values obtained from a sample are significantly different from some standard or reference value, which is the population value, or from other groups or samples. It is where statistical tests are utilized. These are examples of research objectives involving application of inferential statistics. The first two involve estimation, the first of which is estimation of a mean value, which is blood lead levels. The second involves estimation of a proportion, which is the proportion of children with abnormal blood lead levels. The next three involve hypothesis testing. The first, testing the hypothesis if the mean blood lead level from a sample is within the recommended threshold. The second involves testing the hypothesis for the difference in the proportion of blood lead levels between two groups, street children versus children residing near the garbage dump site. And the last is testing the hypothesis on the relationship or correlation specifically between variables blood lead and hemoglobin levels. We first go to estimation. Estimation could either be on a mean, which is for the first objective, the average C-reactive protein levels among COVID-19 positive patients, or on a proportion, which is exemplified by the second objective, the proportion of those with elevated C-reactive protein levels. In addition to estimating the true population parameter, which is the point estimate, it is common practice to also give confidence intervals or interval estimates for that parameter. These interval estimates have the property that if the study were repeated several times, 90% or 95% or 99% of the calculated confidence intervals will include the true value. The point estimate is a single numerical value that is used to approximate the population parameter. The interval estimate consists of two numbers, the lower limit and the upper limit, which serve as bounding values within which the parameter is expected to lie with a certain degree of confidence. In hypothesis testing, the process involves stating the null and alternative hypothesis. Then data is collected from the sample and analyzed. The significance of the result is determined by running a statistical test. When the probability of occurrence under the null hypothesis is true, the sample results support the hypothesis, we decide not to reject it. But when the probability of occurrence is low, meaning the sample results do not support the null hypothesis, the decision is to reject it in favor of the alternative hypothesis. As a review, these are the steps in hypothesis testing, and it is with hypothesis testing where statistical tests are utilized. And this is the third step. There are several factors to consider in the choice of the appropriate statistical test, the first of which is objectives of the study. There are three main objectives to keep in mind, the first of which is comparison with some pre-specified value, which could be a standard value, a national figure, or previous results of a study. And the value could either be a mean or a proportion, such as in the following examples. The blood lead level, which is a continuous variable, is expressed as a mean or average value. This is to be compared with the recommended threshold, which is a standard value. Prevalence is expressed as a proportion. This is to be compared with previous results, which was the 2003 National Nutrition and Health Survey. The second type of objective is comparison between two or more groups on a mean or a proportion. The first example there are two groups, obese and normal weight children, compared on the mean 6-minute walk distance. The second example involves comparison between two groups, private and government physical therapies, on the prevalence of work-related musculoskeletal disorders, which is expressed as a proportion. The third type of objective is determining a relationship or association between variables, which may be quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative variables such as body mass index and neck circumference, and qualitative variables such as gender and smoking status. The next factors to be considered in choosing the appropriate statistical tests are the type of variable, whether qualitative or quantitative, and the level of measurement, which are nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. As a review, you have two types of variables: quantitative, where values are expressed numerically and could either be discrete as integers or whole numbers, or continuous as fractions or decimals, and qualitative, where they are grouped into categories. There are 4 scales or levels of measurement. Under qualitative, you have nominal and ordinal, and under quantitative, you have interval and ratio. Ordinal can also be considered as quantitative. In nominally scaled variables, the classes to which individuals or objects may be assigned are numbered or named. They are best summarized using counts, proportions, percentages, that is, the number, proportion, or percentage of males and females, or the distribution of marital status. In ordinally scaled variables, the classes to which individuals or objects may be assigned are ordered or ranked. And there are 2 types, qualitative ordinal and quantitative ordinal. Qualitative ordinal variables are best summarized and described using counts, proportions, and percentages, while quantitative ordinal variables are best described and summarized using the median, examples of which are your Likert scaled responses and your pain scales. In interval scale, there are exact or equal distances between categories of the variable. The 0 point is arbitrary and does not mean absence of the characteristic. They are best described and summarized using mean, median, or mode. In ratio-scaled variables, the 0 point is fixed, and the ratio between two numbers can be meaningfully computed and interpreted. They are best described and summarized using the mean, median, or mode. For the first study, 6-minute walk distance is measured in meters, and therefore the type of variable is quantitative, and the level of measurement is ratio. For the second study, prevalence is expressed as a proportion, and therefore the type of variable is qualitative, and the level of measurement is nominal. For the third study, weight is measured in kilograms, and therefore the type of variable is quantitative, and the level of measurement is ratio. And for the last study, perceived sleep quality, the type of variable is qualitative, and since there is some ordinality in the data, the level of measurement is ordinal. The next factor to consider are the number of samples and whether they are related or independent. If independent, the probability of selection of the elements in one sample is not in any way influenced by the characteristics of the elements selected in the other sample. For related or paired samples, the probability of selection of elements in one sample is influenced by the composition of the other sample. So for the first study, we have 2 samples, obese and normal weight, which are independent. For the second study, we again have 2 samples, private versus government. Again, they are independent samples. For the third study, we have 2 samples, baseline and post-workshop, which are paired or related. And for the last study, we again have 2 samples, before and after workshop, which again are related samples. Taking into account the above factors simultaneously, the following statistical tests will apply. For the first study, the type of variable is quantitative. The level of measurement is ratio. You have two independent samples, and this will require a test of hypothesis for the difference between two group means, specifically the z-test for large samples or the t-test for small samples. For the second study, the type of variable is qualitative. The level of measurement is nominal. You have two independent samples, and this will require a test of hypothesis for the difference between two group proportions, specifically z-test for two proportions or the chi-square test. Assumption on the distribution is also a consideration in the choice of the statistical test. If the distribution is parametric, assumptions on random selection of the sample, normal distribution of the population from which the samples were drawn, and equality of variances or homoscedasticity have to be satisfied. Data is strictly numerical, either interval or ratio scale. In non-parametric distributions, there are fewer assumptions made. Data may be nominal or ordinal in scale, and sample sizes are smaller. Here is an algorithm which will help you decide what appropriate statistical test to use based on the level of measurement, the number of samples, and the relatedness of the sample. Specifically for the objective on comparison. Let us illustrate this by an example. Several studies have reported a reduction in persistent crying after elimination of cow's milk and other food proteins from the maternal diet. The hypothesis is that among breastfed infants with colic presenting in the first 6 weeks of life, elimination of multiple major allergenic food proteins from the maternal diet is associated with a reduction in the crying and fussing. So a randomized controlled trial of a low allergen maternal diet was conducted among exclusively breastfed infants presenting with colic. The primary endpoint was a reduction in the crying and fussing of the infant. The control diet group had no dietary restrictions, while those on the low allergen diet group, cow's milk, eggs, peanuts, wheat, soy, and fish were excluded from the diet of the mother. At baseline, the mean duration of crying between the low allergen and the control diet group was almost the same, 690 versus 631 minutes. By day 8 or 9, it was lower in the low allergen diet group, 431 minutes, versus the control diet group, 509 minutes. Based on the factors to be considered in the choice of the statistical test, what is the objective of the study? Comparison between groups on a mean. What is the level of measurement? Duration of crying or fussing in minutes in 48 hours is ratio scale. How many samples or groups? There are two, low allergen diet group versus control diet group. Are they related or independent? They are independent. The question is, what is the appropriate statistical test if the mean crying or fussing is to be compared between the low allergen diet group and the control diet group, and within low allergen diet group and control diet group? Using the algorithm, the appropriate statistical test to use to determine differences in the duration of crying and fussing between those on low allergen diet versus control diet is the independent t-test. And the appropriate statistical test to use to determine differences in the duration of crying and fussing between baseline and after 8th and 9th day within the low allergen diet group, and within the control group is the paired t-test. A secondary outcome was the proportion of those with more than or equal to 25% improvement in the symptoms of crying or fussing from baseline. From the table, 74% of those in the low allergen diet group had more than or equal to 25% improvement in symptoms compared to 35% of those in the control diet group. The difference was significant at 0.0004. What statistical test was used to determine if there was a significant difference between groups? Based on the factors to be considered in the choice of the statistical test, what is the objective of the study? Comparison between groups on a proportion. What is the level of measurement? Nominal, because it calls for the proportion of more than or equal to 25% improvement in symptoms. There are two groups, low allergen diet versus control diet groups, and they are independent. So the question is, what is the appropriate statistical test to determine the difference between the groups in terms of improvement in symptoms of colic? The appropriate statistical test to determine if there was a significant difference in the proportion of symptom improvement between the low allergen diet and the control diet group is the chi-square test. These are the tests for investigating relationships between variables, and level or scale of measurement is a factor in the choice. Relationship between two quantitative variables can be tested using correlational analysis or the more efficient linear regression analysis. When both variables are categorical or qualitative, chi-square test of association can be used. When there are several independent variables which may be continuous or categorical, and the dependent variable is dichotomized, the association can be determined using logistic regression analysis. As in the example, the factors are age of gestation, Apgar score, oxygen saturation, and birth weight on the occurrence of retinopathy of prematurity. A discussion of the individual statistical tests and their interpretations will be dealt more in your third year. In the analysis of two-way contingency tables, the following measures of association are recognized. For retrospective and prospective cohort study designs, the measure of association is the risk ratio, which is the ratio of the incidence of disease in the exposed to the incidence of disease in the unexposed, given by the following formula: A over A plus B all over C over C plus D. The risky exposure is placed in the first row and the risky outcome is placed in the first column. For case control study designs, the measure of association is the odds ratio, which is the odds of exposure among cases over the odds of exposure among controls, and is computed using the formula A over C divided by B over D, or AD over BC. And for cross-sectional study designs, the measure for association is the prevalence risk ratio if the disease or outcome is acute, and the prevalence odds ratio if the disease or outcome is chronic, in the context of a cross-sectional study design as lectured to you in your first year. The following slides will provide a basic overview on qualitative data analysis. In qualitative data analysis, voluminous data is turned into a clear, understandable, insightful, trustworthy, and even original analysis, which starts even from the beginning while data is still being collected. Coding is the beginning point for most forms of qualitative data analysis. This will permit the researchers to have a better understanding of their data and to follow up ambiguous data. Additionally, it may reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed with too much data, which usually happens when the researchers commence data analysis after all the data are collected. This is done by a small group of researchers to minimize the bias of an individual investigator. Inevitably, two or more people will code passages differently at times, and therefore it is important to establish at the outset how much discrepancies will be handled. It starts with reading through the initial sets of transcripts, field notes, or documents without making any notes or attempting to interpret the data. After reading through the data, they may wish to write down a few notes about what appears to be particularly interesting, important, or significant. The notes may be very basic, and the researchers may use keywords expressed by the participants. Then they read through the data again. Then they make marginal notes about significant categories that emerge from the data. Marginal notes will allow researchers to maintain attention to detail and assist colleagues or other researchers to see how the researchers have coded their transcripts. The codes are reviewed, and if they have two or more words or phrases that relate to the same issue, one of them is deleted. The developed codes are examined to see if they are relevant to the concepts and categories in the existing literature and if there are connections between the codes. There are many ways that qualitative researchers can make sense of their data. Each approach offers different ways of seeing the data and interpret the findings they generate. Thematic analysis is a method for identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns or themes within the data. Each transcript is read and reread to make sense of the interview data individually and collectively as a group. From the transcribed data, codes are generated initially, then collated into categories and subcategories to find themes. Themes initially developed or revised, then checked if the themes work in relation to the codes. A thematic map of the analysis is then gathered and defined. This is an example of the process of generating codes from raw data and finalizing the codes into themes to describe the attitudes of senior citizens towards utilization of their privileges. The codes generated positive and negative attitudes about utilization of the privileges. The stories people tell do not necessarily appear in a chronological order. In narrative analysis, participants' stories are analyzed and then restoried or retold into a framework that will make sense to the readers. They are written by placing them in a chronological order. The stories are examined for key elements such as time, place, plot, and scene. The transcript is read and reread closely to familiarize with the content and structure of the narratives. One looks for experiences, which are feelings, images, meanings, and reactions. One also looks for accounts, explanations, excuses, which are given in the narratives, and the narrative form, including the linguistic and metaphorical form of telling the stories. A short summary is written about the key elements, such as the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. One looks for transitions between themes, such as the move from a family life to becoming a single mother. One also looks for interruptions or discontinuities that may contradict the themes. Ideas developed about the narratives are then connected with the broader literature and theories, and case-by-case comparisons may be carried out. Example as comparing how different individuals experience similar transitions in their lives, or the views of different participants on the event in which they are all involved. In discourse analysis, different questions from conventional social scientific issues will be asked. For example, a study about why certain individuals refuse to be vaccinated. This course analysis will not try to answer why these individuals refuse to do so, but seek to find out how their decisions for refusals are made, how they respond to criticisms of others about their decision, and how they reestablish their self-identity as non-compliant or vaccine-defiant individuals. First, the data or text to be analyzed is chosen, then coded as inclusively as possible. That is, the transcript has to be recorded verbatim with as many features of the talk included as possible. It should not be cleaned up or corrected in any way, and it must not be a summary. Then the data is analyzed by examining regularity and variability. A hypothesis is formulated and checked for reliability and validity. Semiotic analysis is the study of signs, sign systems, and their meanings. It is suitable for analyzing signs in our everyday life. It explains meaning through our social and cultural background, revealing how we interpret messages instinctively. It goes beyond simply analyzing the themes as in thematic analysis, as it attempts to uncover the way meaning is formed. When writing up the analysis, as many interpretations as possible are allowed, staying close to the language in the text. In semiotic analysis, each sign consists of two parts: the signifier, which is the form it takes, and the signified, which is the concept it represents. Semiotic analysis has three steps: analysis of verbal signs, meaning what you hear and see; analysis of visual signs, meaning what you see; and analysis of the symbolic message or interpretation of what you see. Computer-assisted qualitative data analysis entails the use of computer packages such as Atlas, Maxda, and NVivo to help researchers find, categorize, and retrieve data or text faster than using a manual search. They permit the researchers to code text while working at the computer to retrieve the coded text. This means the computer does all the manual tasks associated with the coding process. It has the following features. However, its use creates some sense of distance from the data. In the fragmentation process of coding, decontextualization of the data may occur. Decisions about coding and interpretation of findings or developing propositions cannot be done. It may not be suitable for focus group discussions where interaction is essential. If the number of cases is small, it is not worth the time and may be too expensive for personal purchase. In summary, the plan for data analysis should be aligned with the study objectives. For quantitative analysis, include measures used for descriptive statistics, statistical tests used based on the factors for its choice, and the measures of association, if any. And for qualitative data analysis, types of analysis utilized. Thank you for listening.